Think back to your childhood. Do you remember the layout of your childhood home? The way your old classroom smelled? The sound of your favorite cartoon's theme song? Chances are you're not remembering those things as they actually were. You're remembering a version of them, one shaped by emotion, time, repetition, and guesswork. In fact, studies show that even our most vivid memories can be reimagined over time, blending real events with imagined ones, media exposure, or stories we've been told. It turns out that memory doesn't work like a video recording. It's not a perfect playback system. It's more like a constantly edited story where your brain fills in missing details using clues, patterns, and even your own imagination. Neuroscientists often compare memory to a reconstructive process rather than a storage system. Each retrieval is a creative act, and that changes how you see your entire past. Every time you recall a memory, you slightly change it. Scientists call this reconsolidation. Imagine opening a document, making a small tweak, and saving it again. Each time, it's a little different. Over the years, some details fade or shift, and others get added, sometimes things that never actually happened. This is why people can recall entire conversations or events that feel real but never occurred, known as false memories. Real-life example? Eyewitnesses in courtrooms often feel sure of what they saw, but studies show their memories can be wildly inaccurate, sometimes even influenced by how a question is asked. The phrasing of a single word, like smashed instead of bumped, can alter the intensity and accuracy of someone's memory. This matters because our memories help shape how we see ourselves. If your memories are wrong, or at least unreliable, then your self-image may be based on shaky ground. Maybe you remember being bad at math or socially awkward in school, but those memories might be exaggerated or misremembered. That realization alone can open up new possibilities in how you view your own capabilities. The main idea here is simple but powerful. Memory is not a fixed record of the past. It's an active process that changes over time. Once you see that, you start questioning some of the truths you've believed about yourself for years. And maybe that's a good thing. Now think about what this means in day-to-day life. If your brain is constantly editing your memories without your permission or awareness, it also means the stories you tell yourself about your life can be rewritten. That's not just poetic, it's scientifically supported. Psychologists use this understanding in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, to help people reframe painful past experiences and shift limiting beliefs. For example, someone might vividly remember failing in a job interview and conclude they're not good under pressure. But upon closer examination, they may realize the memory is colored by anxiety, and the interviewer's comments weren't as harsh as they seemed. By reassessing that memory, they can change the narrative from "I failed" to "I learned something important." This doesn't mean you can or should erase your past. Instead, it highlights the power you have to reinterpret it. Some therapists even use memory reconsolidation techniques deliberately, helping clients update traumatic or negative memories with new emotional insights. It's not about forgetting, it's about healing. And this isn't limited to therapy. Think about relationships. People in long-term relationships often tell the story of how they met or overcame a challenge. Over time, these stories evolve. What's fascinating is that how couples remember these stories often predicts their relationship satisfaction more than what actually happened. In other words, the meaning we give to memories may matter more than the memories themselves. Even culturally, our collective memories shift. Historical events get reinterpreted as new generations revisit the past with different values and perspectives. What was once ignored or minimized becomes central to the story. Memory isn't just personal, it's societal. So the next time you reflect on your past, whether it's a joyful moment or a painful one, remember this. Your brain is not a passive archive. It's an active storyteller. And that storyteller, while flawed, gives you more power than you might think. You can't always trust every detail, but you can trust your capacity to grow beyond the stories that no longer serve you. This shift in understanding has profound implications, not just for psychology, but for education, personal growth, and even justice systems. In education, for instance, recognizing the malleability of memory can help students become more effective learners. Techniques like spaced repetition and retrieval practice are built on the idea that memory is reconstructive. When students are encouraged to recall and apply information multiple times in different contexts, they build more resilient mental models. Not perfect copies, but flexible frameworks that adapt and deepen with time. In the legal world, the fallibility of memory is now taken more seriously than ever. Courts are increasingly wary of eyewitness testimony unless it's supported by other evidence. Some jurisdictions even require special jury instructions to explain how memory can be distorted. Neuroscientific evidence, like brain imaging that shows how memories are formed and altered, has begun to shape how justice is pursued and how guilt or innocence is determined. But perhaps the most personal impact of this knowledge is how it empowers self-compassion. If your past is not an unchangeable record, then your identity isn't fixed either. You are not doomed to repeat mistakes or stay locked in patterns defined by faulty recollections. You can reauthor the narrative. Consider how this applies to emotional memories. Research shows that emotionally charged events, especially negative ones, are more prone to distortion, not less. Your brain, in its effort to protect or make sense of suffering, might exaggerate certain aspects or suppress others. By revisiting these memories through journaling, therapy, or conversation, you create room to reinterpret them with greater kindness and nuance. Importantly, this doesn't mean all memory is unreliable or meaningless. Far from it. Memory is how we connect with loved ones, carry forward traditions, and learn from experience. But understanding its limitations allows us to use it more wisely, to honor the past without being imprisoned by it. So the next time a memory surfaces, especially one that shapes how you see yourself, pause and ask, is this the whole story, or just the version I've told myself the longest? Because if memory is a story, then you have the chance to become not just the character, but the editor, and maybe even the author of what comes next. So what do you do with this knowledge? How do you live differently once you realize your memories, those seemingly solid bricks in the foundation of your identity, are more like shifting sand? First, you practice awareness. Simply knowing that your brain is wired to edit, reshape, and even fabricate elements of your past can help you become a more conscious narrator of your own story. This awareness helps you pause when old beliefs resurface, like I always mess things up, or I was never good enough, and ask where those beliefs came from and whether they still serve you. Second, you give others more grace. If your memories are fluid, theirs are too. That fight with a family member over what really happened, you might both be right, according to your own brains. Understanding this can diffuse conflict and create space for empathy. Relationships improve not when we agree on every detail, but when we honor each other's experience of the past. Third, you explore tools for reauthoring. Techniques like expressive writing, inner child work, guided imagery, or EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, are powerful ways to revisit and reshape memories. Neuroscience shows that imagining new outcomes or emotional responses while recalling an old memory can actually rewire the brain's connection to that event. It's not science fiction, it's neuroplasticity in action. Fourth, you cultivate curiosity. Instead of clinging to your past as fixed truth, you begin to see it as a series of drafts. What if your self-image isn't wrong, but incomplete? What if you've only been telling one version of your story and now it's time to explore another? And finally, you embrace the power of the present. Memory may shape who we are, but the present moment is where transformation begins. Mindfulness practices like meditation, breath work, or even simply paying close attention to your daily experiences help anchor you in the now, the only place where change can truly happen. Because here's the deepest truth of all. If memory is not set in stone, then neither are you. Your story is not just something that happened to you. It's something you're still writing, page by page, word by word. And that means your next chapter can be more intentional, more compassionate, and more aligned with who you choose to become. If your memories shape your story, and that story shapes your identity, then learning to question and revise those memories isn't just a mental exercise. It's a radical act of self-liberation. Many people go their whole lives believing that the past is a prison. I'm this way because of what happened to me, they say. But neuroscience and psychology now tell us something much more hopeful. You are not only the product of your past, you are the curator of how that past lives in you. This realization has transformative potential, especially for those recovering from trauma, failure, or deep regret. While you can't erase what happened, you can change the meaning it holds. Survivors of adversity often report a phenomenon known as post-traumatic growth, where the process of integrating painful memories leads to increased resilience, deeper relationships, and a clearer sense of purpose. But this growth isn't automatic. It begins with the willingness to confront, reflect, and reframe. Memory is also tightly connected to identity flexibility. Research shows that people who view their personalities as changeable over time tend to have better psychological health. If your past is editable, your identity is expandable. You're allowed to outgrow your old labels, the shy one, the troublemaker, the failure, and write new ones based on the person you are becoming. That doesn't mean denying what's true. It means understanding that truth and memory are not always the same. Truth is the raw material. Memory is the interpretation, and interpretation can evolve. This is not just self-help. It's supported by neuroscience, storytelling, and centuries of human experience. From religious rituals that reenact and reinterpret the past to memoirs that reflect on long-ago events with new wisdom, humans have always rewritten their stories to make sense of their lives. So ask yourself, what memory have you been replaying in the same way for years? What would it look like to tell that story differently, not dishonestly, but more compassionately, more completely? How might that shift how you see yourself today? Because the past may have shaped you, but it doesn't have to define you. The beauty of memory is not in its accuracy, it's in its adaptability. And the beauty of being human is that you get to revise the script, not to erase who you were, but to better honor who you are and who you still have the power to become. What does life look like when you start living with this new relationship to memory? It becomes more creative, more forgiving, and surprisingly, more grounded in reality. When you acknowledge that memory is fluid, you stop clinging to rigid narratives. You give yourself room to be more than your worst day, more than your childhood conditioning, more than someone else's version of who you were. This flexibility also makes you a better learner, not just of facts, but of life itself. The ability to reinterpret experiences is a cornerstone of emotional intelligence. People who can reflect, revise, and reframe tend to navigate change more smoothly. They adapt not because they forget the past, but because they've made peace with the fact that it's not static. And this adaptability may be more important now than ever. In a world of constant information overload and revisionist history, online and off, critical thinking about memory helps protect against manipulation. False memories can be socially engineered, not just self-generated. Researchers studying memory implantation have found that repeated exposure to misleading information, especially with emotional cues, can create entirely false recollections. Recognizing this makes us more discerning and less susceptible to influence, both personally and collectively. On a cultural level, our evolving understanding of memory invites us to be better historians, citizens, and storytellers. It encourages us to ask, whose memories have been preserved, whose have been erased, and how do we make room for more inclusive narratives, not just in our own lives, but in the stories we tell as societies? In relationships, it brings a quieter wisdom. You stop needing others to remember things exactly as you do. You trade the quest for objective truth for mutual understanding. You begin to see the beauty in the way two people can share the same moment, but carry away different truths, both valid in their own emotional logic. And perhaps most importantly, it softens your inner world. When a painful memory resurfaces, instead of being trapped by it, you can greet it with curiosity. What is this memory trying to tell me now? Has it changed since I last met it? Because that's the final insight. As your memories evolve, so does your relationship to them. What once defined you can now inform you. What once haunted you can now teach you. What once felt like the end of your story might actually be the beginning of a new chapter. And if that's true, if memory is less about what happened and more about what it means, then every moment is a chance to rewrite not just the past, but the future, with clarity, with compassion, and with intention.